He threw the Carrie novel in the trash because he thought, nobody will read this garbage. If his wife hadn't rescued those pages from the trash, the world would never have known Stephen King. This single decision made him a millionaire and changed the history of horror literature. King's story is proof that sometimes our greatest successes might be waiting just one step away. He was an alcoholic, unemployed, and hopeless writer. But now, he's known as the king of horror. So what about you? Which projects are you giving up on too early? Stephen King's story isn't just about writing success. This is the story of a man battling rejection, fear, poverty, and his own doubts. He was rejected countless times, ran out of money, his family went hungry, but he never stopped writing. When you see Stephen King today, you see a legend who has sold nearly 400 million books worldwide, had over 60 film and TV adaptations made. But behind this success is a story written on pages rescued from a trash can. The biggest lesson King teaches is this: the difference between success and failure is often just paper thin. Whether to throw a project in the trash or not, whether to finish a story or not, whether to pursue a dream or not. So how did Stephen King rise from the poor streets of Maine to the pinnacle of Hollywood? Did he really throw his first novel in the trash? And most importantly, how can his experiences change your creative journey? This story will show that no creative project is really trash. It might just be waiting for its right time. Because what King proved is this: sometimes what needs to be thrown away isn't your project, but your doubts about yourself. Stephen Edwin King was born on September 21, 1947, in Portland, Maine. But his childhood was far from easy. His father, Donald King, when Stephen was only 2 years old, said, "I'm going out for cigarettes," and left the house, never to return. His mother, Nellie Ruth King, had to raise 2 children, Stephen and his older brother David, alone. Being a single mother in the 1950s, especially in rural Maine, was a very difficult situation. Nellie worked various jobs to support the family: babysitting, cleaning, occasionally caring for elderly people, whatever work she could find. The family constantly moved, searching for cheaper houses. One of Stephen's earliest memories was seeing his mother crying while doing accounts at the table at night. Money was always tight, bills were piling up, and the future was uncertain. These difficult conditions shaped young Stephen's character. He learned life's hardships at a very early age and turned to storytelling as an escape route. His first horror experience happened at age 4. When he heard that his close friend Ray Brower had died in a train accident, Stephen realized how fear and imagination could combine. This event would also form the basis for the story Stand By Me that he would write later. At age 6, Stephen wrote his first story. It was a 4-page story about a rabbit. When his mother read it, she liked it so much that she showed it to neighbors and praised Stephen. This first approval was very important for Stephen. When Stephen started school, his teachers immediately noticed his writing talent. But they also saw that he was a different child. Stephen wasn't interested in the games other children played. He would sit in a corner and write stories. Teachers were initially worried. "Why does this child always write dark stories?" they asked. Stephen's stories usually contained monsters, ghosts, and horror-filled events. But a teacher named Mrs. Taylor saw Stephen's talent and supported him. "Stephen, you have a special talent. Keep writing," she would say. During elementary school years, Stephen began publishing a small newspaper called Dave's Rag with his brother David. Stephen wrote stories and David sold them. This experience taught Stephen that writing could also make money. At age 12, Stephen wrote his first official story and sent it to a local magazine. It was rejected, but this rejection didn't discourage Stephen. On the contrary, it motivated him to write more. During high school, Stephen began writing for the school newspaper. Sports news, humorous articles, horror stories, whatever he wrote, his friends loved to read. But high school years were challenging for Stephen, not only in terms of writing, but also personal development. He was a shy child with weak social skills. He couldn't fit in among the popular kids and spent most of his time alone. This loneliness further enriched Stephen's inner world. He learned to observe and began analyzing people's behaviors. This skill would be very useful when creating characters later. In 1966, Stephen enrolled at the University of Maine. He studied English literature and began working for the university newspaper, MAINE Campus. During this period, his writing skills developed further. In college, Stephen began dreaming of being published professionally. He started sending stories to magazines and publishers, and rejection letters began arriving. The first rejection letter was a big shock for Stephen. He thought he really liked his story, but the editor had written, "Unfortunately not suitable for our needs." But Stephen didn't give up. He sent the second story. It was also rejected. Third, fourth, fifth. Rejection letters kept coming. Stephen hung all the rejection letters on a nail in his room. "One day, this nail won't be able to bear the weight of the rejection letters," he told his friends. In 1967, Stephen made his first professional sale. His story, The Glass Floor, was published in Startling Mystery Stories magazine, and he received $35. This money was a large amount for Stephen. This first success gave Stephen great morale. "So I can do it," he told himself. But at the same time, he understood how difficult it was. During university years, Stephen also witnessed the Vietnam War. He participated in anti-war protests, and these experiences strengthened social criticism elements in the stories he would write later. Stephen graduated in 1970. Now it was time to face the real world. After graduating from university, the reality Stephen faced was merciless. Finding a job with an English literature degree was very difficult, and writing wasn't making money yet. His first job was teaching English at Hamden Academy. His salary was $6,400 per year, a very low wage for that time. Stephen could barely get by with this money. In 1971, Stephen married Tabitha Spruce. Tabitha was also an aspiring writer and understood Stephen's passion for writing. But marriage increased financial problems even more. Stephen began doing part-time jobs in addition to teaching. He worked at a gas station, worked at a laundromat, and even worked as a night watchman at a cemetery for a period. During this period, Stephen's writing routine was: wake up at 6 a.m., write for an hour before going to school, write again when he came home in the evening. He devoted weekends entirely to writing. But despite all this effort, rejection letters kept coming. Stephen's rejection letters hung on the nail had already exceeded the nail's capacity. In 1972, their first child, Naomi, was born. Now Stephen had to support not only himself, but also a family. Financial pressure increased even more. During this period, Stephen started drinking alcohol. Stress, disappointment, and financial difficulties drove him to drink. This would become a big problem later. At the beginning of 1973, Stephen had to quit his teaching job at Hampton Academy. His financial situation was so bad that the phone line was cut and he couldn't pay the house rent. During this period, Stephen began working as a janitor at Bangor Mental Health Institute. He worked the night shift and came home during the day to try to write. One night during his shift, Stephen got a strange idea. He remembered the topics female students talked about in the bathrooms when he was teaching: periods, body changes, social exclusion. When he came home, Stephen began writing about a girl named Carrie White, who had telekinetic powers. The story was about a high school girl being bullied and her revenge. But Stephen kept getting stuck while writing this story. "I'm a male writer. How can I write about the inner world of young girls?" he thought. Moreover, the story seemed too commercial to him. After writing about 3 pages, Stephen crumpled up the pages and threw them in the trash. "This is garbage," he told himself. "Nobody will read something like this." Here came the most critical moment of the story. The next day, Tabitha saw the crumpled pages while emptying the trash. She curiously opened and read them. That evening when Stephen came home, Tabitha was waiting for him. "What is this?" she said, holding out the pages. "Garbage," said Stephen. "A bad story beginning." Tabitha told him, "Stephen, this is great. Why did you stop? You understand girls. You must finish this story." Stephen couldn't believe his wife's words, but Tabitha insisted. She even shared her own experiences, her memories of bullying in high school to support him. After this conversation, Stephen decided to continue writing Carrie. Stephen continued writing Carrie, but was still not very hopeful. "At least let me finish it," he said. The story was completed in 3 months. After finishing Carrie, Stephen sent it to Doubleday Publishing House. He was expecting another rejection letter, but at least he would have tried. During the same period, Stephen's financial situation got even worse. The electricity was cut, there was no phone, the car was broken. The family had to borrow money from relatives. While waiting for a response from Doubleday, Stephen began working at a local laundromat. He worked among heavy machines and came home tired and worn out. One afternoon, while Stephen was at the laundromat, Tabitha came to the school. She was frantically looking for Stephen. "Doubleday called," she said breathlessly. "They're looking for you." Stephen panicked. "Rejection letter?" he asked. "I don't know, I told them to call back." Stephen took leave from work and ran to the school. He called Doubleday from the assistant principal's office. Editor Bill Thompson on the phone told Stephen, "Mr. King, we really liked Carrie. We're offering you a $2,500 advance." Stephen almost fainted at that moment. $2,500 was almost half of his annual salary. Carrie's acceptance became the turning point of Stephen King's life. But the real shock came a little later. A few months later, Carrie's paperback rights went to auction. The result exceeded Stephen's dreams: $400,000. This money meant $200,000 for Stephen's share. For those days' value, this was a tremendous amount. When Stephen received the news, he was working at the laundromat. Tabitha called him with the good news. Stephen quit his job that day and never looked back. Carrie was published in 1974 and achieved great success. The book was liked by both critics and readers. Stephen King was now a professional writer. But success also brought new challenges for Stephen. Now he had to prove that he wouldn't be a one-book writer. After Carrie's success, Stephen began his second novel, Salem's Lot. This time he was using a vampire theme, but with a modern approach. While writing Salem's Lot, Stephen experienced the difficulties of being a full-time writer. He had to write every day, but sometimes inspiration didn't come. During this period, Stephen developed his writing discipline. He decided to write at least 2,000 words every day. Whether inspiration came or not, he would sit and write. Salem's Lot was published in 1975 and achieved even greater success than Carrie. Now Stephen King was the rising star of horror literature. These successes gave Stephen confidence, but also created great pressure. His editors and publishers constantly wanted new works. With success, Stephen's alcohol problem also grew. He thought it was part of the creative process. "Alcohol increases my creativity," he said. But in reality, alcohol was slowly taking over his life. During this period, Stephen wrote The Shining. Ironically, it was a story about alcohol addiction, and Stephen was drawing inspiration from his own experiences. While writing The Shining, Stephen noticed similarities between the character Jack Torrance and himself. This disturbed him, but also made the story stronger. In the 1980s, Stephen King became not just a writer, but also a brand. Every new book of his was eagerly awaited. During this period, Stephen also published books under the pseudonym Richard Bachman. His purpose was to test whether he could write without being overshadowed by the Stephen King name. The Richard Bachman books were also successful, which proved to Stephen that his talent was real. At the end of the 1980s, Stephen's alcohol problem reached serious dimensions. His family intervened, and Stephen received treatment. This period was very difficult for Stephen. He was afraid of whether he could write without alcohol. But thanks to treatment, he discovered that his real creativity was stronger without alcohol. In the 1990s, Stephen gave his strongest works written while sober. Misery, the Dark Tower series, Gerald's Game, all were written during this period. Today, Stephen King is 76 years old, but still actively writing. He has written over 60 books, sold millions of books, and become a legend in the literary world. His works have been adapted into over 60 films and TV series. It, The Shining, Carrie, The Green Mile, all are products of his creativity. Stephen King's writing philosophy is simple. Write every day, whether it comes out good or bad. He believes that writing is 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. A writer who waits for inspiration will wait forever, he says. King's writing rules. 1. Write at least 2,000 words every day. 2. Don't show the first draft to anyone. 3. Don't edit until your story is finished. Today, Stephen King isn't just a writer, he's a cultural phenomenon. His influence extends far beyond horror literature. He's mentored countless writers, championed literacy programs, and used his platform to advocate for social justice. King has shown that commercial success and artistic integrity can coexist. His advice to aspiring writers is simple, but profound. Read a lot, write a lot, and don't give up. After listening to Stephen King's story, ask yourself these questions. Which projects am I giving up on too early? Which creative works am I throwing away as trash? Am I giving up at the first rejection letter? Because the transformation King experienced isn't just his story. This is proof that no creative effort is really wasted. He threw Carrie in the trash, but his wife rescued it. What treasures might come out of your trash can? Take action today. Finish that half-completed project. Revisit that rejected story. Start pursuing that impossible creative dream. Like Stephen King hung rejection letters on a nail, you too should see rejection as part of the path to success. Every rejection brings you one step closer to your goal. Remember, King received over 350 rejections but never gave up, because he knew that a single acceptance would make him forget all the rejections. Now get up and start writing your own creative story, because inside each of you is a Stephen King waiting to be discovered. And remember, sometimes what needs to be thrown away isn't your project, but your doubts about yourself. King proved this. You can do it too. Start writing your own Carrie. But this time, don't throw it in the trash. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because as Rise Stories, we will continue to bring you many more real stories of people who brought creativity to life and never gave up on their dreams.